Hey everyone, thanks for clicking on this video. Before we start, I need you to understand something. Everything I'm about to tell you happened. I have documentation, I have recordings, I have scars, both physical and mental, that will never heal. If you've ever wondered what's really going on at Skinwalker Ranch, if you've watched the TV show and thought it seemed too crazy to be real, let me tell you something. The show doesn't even scratch the surface. They can't show you what's really there. They're not allowed to. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want the truth. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And if you're in Utah, if you've ever driven past that property on the 40, you already know something's wrong with that place. You can feel it. All right, let's get into it. My name is Marcus Cole. I'm 45 years old. I spent 8 years in the United States Army, 4 of them with the 75th Ranger Regiment. I've been deployed to places I can't name, done things that don't exist on any official record. After I got out in 2006, I went into private security. The money was good, the work was familiar, and I figured nothing in the civilian world could be worse than what I'd seen in combat. I was wrong. In March 2008, I was recruited for a security position at a property in northeastern Utah. The recruiter was vague about the details. Said the client was a billionaire with unusual research interests. Said the property had a history of strange occurrences. Said they needed people with military backgrounds who could handle stress and keep their mouths shut. The pay was 3 times what I was making anywhere else. Full benefits, housing provided, 4-year contract with a substantial completion bonus. The only catch was a non-disclosure agreement that was 57 pages long and covered everything from what I saw to what I dreamed about while I was there. I signed it anyway. I needed the money. My marriage was falling apart. My VA disability claim was stuck in bureaucratic hell. And I figured, how bad could it be? Some rich guy's ranch with a spooky reputation. I'd spent months in Afghanistan watching for Taliban. I could handle some coyotes and trespassers. That's what I told myself. The property was called Skinwalker Ranch. Maybe you've heard of it. It's famous now. There's a TV show, books, documentaries. But back in 2008, it wasn't as well known. Just whispers in certain circles. UFO enthusiasts, paranormal researchers, Native American communities who'd been warning people about that land for generations. The ranch sat in the Uintah Basin, about 150 miles east of Salt Lake City. 512 acres of high desert terrain, mesas and ridges and scrubland that looked like something from another planet. The nearest town was Fort Duchesne, population barely over 1,000. The nearest anything was miles away. It was isolated. Deliberately isolated. The kind of place where things could happen and nobody would ever know. The owner at the time was Robert Bigelow, billionaire, founder of Bigelow Aerospace, the guy who built inflatable space station modules for NASA. He'd bought the ranch in 1996 from a family called the Shermans, who'd fled the property after 2 years of experiences that defied explanation. Bigelow wasn't interested in cattle ranching. He was interested in what was happening on that land. He'd set up a research organization called NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science, specifically to study the phenomena at Skinwalker Ranch. When NIDS disbanded in 2004, Bigelow kept the property, kept researching, kept hiring people like me to watch and document and protect. Protect from what? That was the question I should have asked before I signed the contract. I didn't. I just showed up in March 2008, ready to do a job. There were 6 of us on the security team, all ex-military, all with combat experience. The team leader was a guy named Frank Reeves, former Marine Force Recon, been at the ranch since 2001. He'd seen more than any of us. You could tell by his eyes. They had that 1,000-yard stare that never quite went away. The others were Dave Morrison, ex-Army infantry, 2 years on site. Carlos Gutierrez, former Navy SEAL, 18 months. Tommy Park, ex-Air Force Security Forces, 1 year. And Sarah Chen, former Army Military Police, 6 months. She was the newest before me. Frank gave me the orientation on my first day. We walked the perimeter of the property while he explained the rules. Rule 1. Never go anywhere alone after dark. Ever. No exceptions. Rule 2. Document everything, every sound, every light, every feeling, even if it seems insignificant. Especially if it seems insignificant. Rule 3. Don't try to interact with the phenomena. Don't chase lights. Don't investigate sounds. Observe and report. That's it. Rule 4. If something approaches you, if something manifests near you, do not engage. Retreat to the nearest secure structure and radio for backup. Rule 5. The homestead, the command center, and the equipment shed are the only safe zones. Everything else on this property is hostile territory after sundown. I remember laughing when he told me that. Hostile territory, like we were still in Afghanistan. Frank didn't laugh. He just looked at me with those dead eyes and said, "You'll understand soon enough." Everyone does. That night, I understood. I was assigned to the East Observation Post, a small shack on a ridge overlooking a pasture where Bigelow kept a herd of cattle for research purposes. My job was simple. Watch the cattle, watch the sky, document anything unusual. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Just darkness and stars and the sound of wind across the scrubland. I started to relax. Started to think maybe this job was going to be easier than I expected. Guard duty on a rich guy's ranch. I'd done worse. Around 200, the cattle started acting strange. They'd been clustered together in the center of the pasture, sleeping or grazing quietly, but suddenly they all stood up at once. Every single animal. Like something had triggered them simultaneously. Then they started running. Not in random panic like you'd expect from spooked cattle. They ran in a perfect circle, round and round the pasture, faster and faster. Their eyes were wide and white with terror, but they kept running in that circle like something was hurting them, something I couldn't see. I radioed Frank. "East Post, something's wrong with the cattle. They're running in circles." "Copy that," he responded. "Do not leave your post. Observe and document." I grabbed the night vision scope and watched. The cattle ran for maybe 10 minutes. Then, all at once, they stopped. Froze in place like statues. Not a single animal moving. And then the light appeared. It came from above. A soft, blue glow that seemed to descend from nowhere. No sound, no aircraft. Just light. Dropping down toward the pasture like a slow-motion spotlight. The light touched one of the cows, a big Angus heifer near the edge of the herd. The animal didn't react, didn't move, just stood there as the blue light enveloped it. I watched through the scope as the cow rose off the ground. I'm not making this up. I'm not exaggerating. The cow lifted into the air. 4 feet, 6 feet, 10 feet. Rising toward the source of the light that I couldn't see. Then the light blinked out. Just disappeared. And the cow fell. It hit the ground hard. Too hard. I heard the impact from 300 yards away. A wet, heavy sound that I'd heard before in combat. The sound of a body hitting earth. The other cattle scattered, finally breaking from whatever trance had held them. They ran to the far corners of the pasture and stood there trembling. I radioed Frank again. "East Post, one of the cattle is down. Possible aerial phenomenon, requesting permission to investigate." There was a long pause. Then Frank's voice, "Negative. Hold position until dawn. Do not approach." I held position, watched the fallen cow through my scope. It wasn't moving. Wasn't breathing. Just lying there in the moonlight, a dark shape against the pale grass. At dawn, the whole security team went out to investigate. What we found wasn't a cow anymore. The animal had been mutilated. That's the word they use, but it doesn't capture what I saw. The hide had been removed from one side of the body. Not cut, removed, like it had been peeled away with surgical precision. The muscle beneath was exposed, but bloodless, completely bloodless. The eyes were gone, the tongue was gone, the reproductive organs were gone, cored out like someone had used a laser scalpel. But here's the thing that still keeps me awake at night. There was no blood, not on the animal, not on the ground, not anywhere. An 800-pound cow had been butchered in the middle of a field, and there wasn't a single drop of blood. Frank took photographs, made notes, called it in to whoever he reported to. Then he looked at me. "First week's usually the hardest," he said. "It gets easier. You get numb to it." I didn't believe him then. I was still trying to process what I'd seen, trying to find a rational explanation, some kind of predator, some kind of natural phenomenon. Anything that fit the world I thought I understood. But there was no rational explanation. There never was at Skinwalker Ranch. That was the first thing I learned. The second thing I learned came 3 days later. I was on night patrol with Sarah, walking the fence line on the north end of the property. It was quiet, clear sky, half moon providing enough light to see without night vision. Sarah was telling me about her time at the ranch, the things she'd witnessed, lights in the sky that moved in impossible ways, animals that appeared and disappeared, voices in the darkness that called your name. I was only half listening, still skeptical, still thinking there had to be explanations for everything. Then we both heard it. Footsteps, heavy footsteps, coming from the scrubland to our left, moving parallel to our path. We stopped, raised our weapons, scanned the area with our flashlights. Nothing. Just brush and rocks and empty desert. But the footsteps continued. We could hear them clearly, something large moving through the vegetation, something staying just out of sight. "Don't engage," Sarah whispered. "Remember the rules. We observe and report. That's it. What if it attacks? Then we defend ourselves and retreat. But we don't chase it. We never chase it." The footsteps circled around us. I could track them by sound, moving from our left to behind us to our right, like something was sizing us up, deciding whether we were worth the effort. Then I saw the eyes. 2 points of orange light in the darkness, about 6 feet off the ground, watching us from maybe 50 yards away. Not animal eyes. I've seen animal eyeshine before. Deer, coyotes, wolves. This was different. These eyes weren't reflecting our flashlights. They were generating their own light, glowing from within. "Sarah," I said quietly, "you seeing this?" "I see it. Just stay calm. Don't show fear. They can sense fear." "They." She said they, like she knew exactly what was watching us. The eyes blinked, then they moved, not toward us, not away, sideways, like the thing was circling, still evaluating. I kept my rifle trained on those eyes. Finger on the trigger, every instinct screaming at me to fire, but I didn't. Something held me back. Maybe it was Sarah's warning. Maybe it was the training that said don't engage unknown targets. Or maybe it was something else. Something about those eyes that told me a bullet wouldn't do any good. The thing watched us for another minute. Then the eyes rose, higher and higher, 7 feet, 8 feet, 9 feet off the ground. Whatever this was, it was standing up. I heard a sound then, a vocalization that I can't describe accurately. Not a growl, not a bark. Something between a dog and a human. A sound that shouldn't exist, but did. Then the eyes disappeared. The footsteps resumed, moving away from us now, fading into the distance until the night was silent again. Sarah and I stood there for a long time. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us needed to. I'd just seen something that wasn't supposed to exist. Something that matched the descriptions I'd dismissed as folklore. The Navajo called them Ye-Naal-Dlushi. The Ute called them different names. In English, we call them skinwalkers, and I'd just learned that they were real. We reported the encounter. Frank logged it like it was routine. Just another night at Skinwalker Ranch. Over the next few weeks I saw more. Things in the sky that defied physics. Lights that appeared from nowhere and vanished the same way. Objects that moved at impossible speeds and changed direction instantaneously. I saw cattle mutilations. 3 more in my first month. Always the same pattern. Surgical removal of specific organs. Complete absence of blood. No tracks. No evidence of predators. I saw things that I still can't explain. Shadows that moved against the light. Shapes that appeared on camera but were invisible to the naked eye. Sounds that seemed to come from underground, from inside the earth itself. And I saw the skinwalker 3 more times, always at night, always watching, never attacking, like it was curious about us, studying us the way we were trying to study it. By the end of my first month, I understood why Frank had those dead eyes, why all of them did. You can't see the things we saw and stay the same. You can't experience that reality and go back to believing the world is normal. The world isn't normal. It never was. We just tell ourselves it is because the truth is too terrifying to accept. Skinwalker Ranch taught me that. And that was just the beginning. Because the things I saw in my first month were nothing compared to what came later. Nothing compared to what happened when the phenomena stopped just watching us and started interacting directly. Nothing compared to the night the portal opened and something came through. But I'll get to that. I'll tell you everything. Every moment of those 4 years. Every horror. Every wonder. Everything that the NDA says I'm not supposed to talk about. They can sue me. They can threaten me. They can do whatever they want. I'm done being silent. The world needs to know what's really at Skinwalker Ranch. What's been there for centuries. What's getting stronger every year. And what's going to happen if someone doesn't do something about it soon. 6 months into my contract, I thought I'd seen everything Skinwalker Ranch had to offer. I'd witnessed cattle mutilations. Tracked unidentified aerial phenomena across the night sky. Encountered the skinwalker on multiple occasions. I'd documented hundreds of anomalous events and filled dozens of reports. I was wrong about seeing everything. I hadn't even scratched the surface. September 2008. The incident that changed everything. It started with the equipment. We had sensors all over the property, motion detectors, infrared cameras, electromagnetic field monitors, radiation detectors, seismographs. If something moved or emitted energy anywhere on those 512 acres, we were supposed to know about it. On September 14th, every single sensor went offline at exactly 2:47 a.m. Not one by one. Not in sequence. All of them. Simultaneously. Like someone had flipped a switch. Frank called an emergency muster. All 6 of us gathered in the command center, checking systems, trying to figure out what had happened. The equipment wasn't damaged, wasn't malfunctioning. It was just off. Drawing power, but not registering anything. Then the lights in the command center started flickering. Not the normal flicker of a power surge. A pattern. Fast, fast, slow, fast, fast, slow. Like something was communicating through the electrical system. Carlos was the first to notice the temperature drop. Is it just me, or is it getting cold in here? He was right. The temperature in the room was falling rapidly. I could see my breath. Frost was forming on the inside of the windows. Frank grabbed the radio, tried to contact Bigelow's research team in Las Vegas. Nothing but static. That's when Sarah screamed. She was looking out the window, pointing at something in the darkness outside. We all turned to look. There was a light in the middle of the east pasture. Not a spotlight. Not headlights. Something else. A vertical oval of pale blue luminescence, maybe 20 feet tall, hanging in the air about 3 feet off the ground. It looked like a doorway. "What the hell is that?" Dave whispered. Nobody answered. We all knew what it looked like. We'd all read the reports from previous researchers. The portal phenomenon. One of the most documented and least understood aspects of Skinwalker Ranch. A doorway to somewhere else. Or from somewhere else. The portal pulsed, brightened, and something came through. I couldn't make it out clearly from the command center. Just a shape, dark, large, moving out of the light and into our world like it was stepping through a curtain, then another shape and another, 3 of them, emerging from the portal and spreading out into the pasture. "Weapons," Frank said. His voice was calm, professional. The voice of a man who'd seen too much to be surprised anymore. "Everyone armed. We're going out there." "Are you insane?" Tommy said. "We're supposed to observe and report, not engage." The rules changed when that thing opened. Whatever came through, we need to document it, and we need to make sure it doesn't leave the property. We armed up. Rifles, sidearms, night vision. Frank led the way out of the command center. We moved in tactical formation, covering each sector, approaching the pasture where the portal still glowed. The cold was worse outside. Not natural cold. Something else. A cold that seemed to come from inside you, that froze your bones before it touched your skin. We were maybe 200 yards from the portal when we saw them clearly for the first time. They weren't animals. They weren't human. They were something in between. Humanoid shapes, roughly 7 feet tall, with proportions that were almost right but not quite. Arms too long, legs jointed wrong. Heads that seemed to shift and blur, never quite coming into focus even through night vision. And they were looking at us. All 3 of them. Standing in a line, watching our approach, not moving, just waiting. Frank raised his fist. We stopped. "Nobody fires unless I give the order," he said quietly. "We don't know what these things are or what they can do. We observe first." One of the creatures took a step forward, then another, moving toward us with a gait that was wrong, mechanical almost, like it was learning how to walk as it went. The portal behind them flickered, started to dim. "It's closing," Sarah said. "The doorway is closing." She was right. The oval of light was shrinking, getting smaller every second. Whatever these things were, they were about to be stuck in our world. The lead creature stopped about 50 yards away. It made a sound, a vocalization that I felt more than heard, a frequency that vibrated in my chest and made my teeth ache. Then it raised what might have been an arm, pointed at us, and the air between us started to shimmer. "Down!" Frank shouted. We hit the dirt just as something passed over our heads. I don't know what it was. A pulse of energy, a blast of concentrated force. Something that tore up the ground behind us and sent rocks and dirt flying. They were attacking. "Return fire!" Frank opened up with his rifle. We all did. Muzzle flashes lighting the darkness. Bullets flying toward the creatures. I saw my rounds hit the lead creature, saw them pass through it like it wasn't even there. No blood, no reaction. The thing just kept coming. Carlos was on his feet, advancing, firing on full auto. The bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. He got within 30 yards of the creatures before one of them reached him. It moved fast, faster than anything that size should be able to move. 1 second, it was 50 yards away. The next, it was on top of Carlos. I saw it grab him, saw him lift it off the ground, heard him scream, then there was a flash of light, and Carlos was gone. Not dead. Gone. No body, no blood, just gone. "Fall back!" Frank was screaming. "Everyone fall back to the command center." We ran, Dave and Tommy laying down covering fire while the rest of us retreated. The creatures pursued, but slowly, almost leisurely, like they knew we couldn't escape. We made it back to the command center, slammed the doors, started barricading. What happened to Carlos? Sarah was shaking. We all were. "Where did he go?" "The portal," Frank said. "They took him through the portal, but the portal closed. We saw it close." Frank looked at her. His eyes were emptier than I'd ever seen them. "There's more than one way in and out of this place. The portal in the pasture was just the front door. These things have been coming and going for a long time. They have other ways." The creatures reached the command center. We could hear them outside, moving around the building, testing the walls, looking for a way in. One of them appeared at the window, that shifting, blurring face pressed against the glass, looking at us with eyes that weren't quite there. Tommy raised his rifle. Frank pushed it down. "Don't. We already know bullets don't work. We need to wait them out, see if they leave when the sun comes up. And if they don't, then we figure something else out." We waited. All night. The creatures circled the command center for hours. Occasionally one would test a door or a window, but they never broke through, never forced their way in. Just before dawn, they left, walked back toward the pasture, moving in that wrong, mechanical way. Then they simply weren't there anymore. No portal, no flash of light. They just vanished. Carlos never came back. We searched the property for 3 days, found no body, no evidence, nothing except the scorch marks where that first energy blast had torn up the ground. The official report said Carlos had left the property without authorization and was considered AWOL. A lie, a cover-up. The first of many I'd be forced to accept. His family was told he'd had a mental breakdown, that he'd walked off into the desert and was presumed dead from exposure. They held a memorial service with an empty casket. I still think about Carlos sometimes, wonder if he's dead. Wonder if he's somewhere else, somewhere on the other side of that portal. Wonder if he's still screaming. After September 2008, everything changed. Bigelow sent in more researchers, more equipment, more security. We went from a team of 6 to a team of 12, all ex-military, all vetted, all told that what they were about to see would challenge everything they believed. The phenomena increased too, like that portal opening had been a signal, an invitation. Things that had been dormant became active. Events that had been occasional became frequent. We saw UFOs almost every night, not distant lights that could be explained away. Close encounters, craft that hovered directly over the property, that descended to within 100 feet of the ground, that shined lights down on us like we were specimens being examined. The Skinwalker sightings multiplied. We went from seeing it once a week to seeing it almost every night, sometimes alone, sometimes in groups, 3 or 4 of them moving through the scrubland, watching us from just beyond the fence line, and the portals. After September, they opened regularly, not always in the same place, not always the same size, but always that same pale blue light, that same sense of a doorway to somewhere else. We developed protocols. When a portal opened, we documented its location and duration but didn't approach. When something came through, we retreated to secure structures and waited it out. We learned that most things that emerged went back after a few hours. Most things. But not everything. Some things stayed. Took up residence on the property, made it their home. In October 2008, something moved into the old homestead. The homestead was a small house at the center of the property, built in the 1930s by the original settlers, empty for years. We used it for storage mostly. Nobody liked going there. It had a feeling, a heaviness, like the air was thicker inside those walls. One night, the motion sensors picked up activity inside the homestead. Continuous activity, something moving from room to room, pacing, exploring. Frank sent Dave and Tommy to investigate. They went in with cameras and weapons and full tactical gear. They came out screaming. I've never seen men run that fast. Combat veterans. Men who'd faced enemy fire without flinching, running like their lives depended on it. Which, I guess they were. Tommy couldn't speak for 2 hours. Just sat in the command center shaking and crying. Dave was a little better. He managed to tell us what they'd seen. Something was living in the homestead. Something that looked almost human but wasn't. That spoke in voices they recognized. Their mothers, their wives, their children. Calling to them from the darkness. Asking why they'd left. Asking why they'd abandoned them. A skinwalker, not just watching anymore. Nesting. Setting up a hunting ground inside the property itself. We sealed the homestead after that. Boarded up the windows, locked the doors, warned everyone to stay away. It didn't matter, whatever was in there, it didn't need doors. Over the next few months, we'd see it emerge from the homestead at night, watch it roam the property. Watch it test our defenses, watch it wait. For what, we didn't know. But we were about to find out. December 2008. The first direct attack on a human being inside the property boundaries. Sarah was doing a routine equipment check on the West Ridge. Solo mission. Daylight. Should have been completely safe. She triggered her emergency beacon at 14:23 hours. We responded immediately, full team, weapons hot. We found her at the bottom of a ravine. Conscious but injured. Something had pushed her off the ridge, something she'd never seen coming. It was invisible, she kept saying. I felt it behind me. Felt hands on my back. But when I turned around, nothing was there. Then I was falling. She had scratches on her back. Deep scratches. 3 parallel marks, like something with claws had grabbed her before pushing. Sarah survived. Broken arm, cracked ribs, psychological trauma that would end her contract 3 months later. She couldn't stay after that. Couldn't close her eyes without feeling those invisible hands. I didn't blame her. I was starting to understand why the ranch had such high turnover. Why people lasted months, maybe a year or 2 before they broke. Why Frank was the only one who'd stayed for more than 3 years. This place didn't just show you things. It got inside you, changed you, made you doubt everything you thought you knew about reality. By the end of 2008, I'd been at Skinwalker Ranch for 9 months. I'd witnessed hundreds of anomalous events, lost one team member to something we couldn't explain, watched another be permanently injured by something we couldn't see, and I still had 3 years and 3 months left on my contract. 3 years and 3 months of escalating phenomena, of watching things get worse, of learning just how deep the strangeness at that place really went. The first year had been an introduction, a warm-up, the universe showing me that everything I believed was wrong. Years 2 through 4 would be the real education, and the tuition would be paid in blood. Year 2 at Skinwalker Ranch taught me something important. The phenomena weren't random. They weren't chaotic. There was a pattern, a system, Something was testing us, learning us. And whatever that something was, it was getting smarter. The researchers called it the intelligence. They'd been studying the ranch since the 1990s, documenting thousands of events, trying to find connections. By 2009, they'd developed a theory. The ranch wasn't haunted in the traditional sense. It wasn't a place where spirits lingered or monsters nested. It was something else entirely, a location where the barriers between realities were thin, where things could pass through from other dimensions, other timelines, other planes of existence, and something on the other side was watching, not just observing passively, interacting, responding to what we did, changing its behavior based on our actions, like a scientist running experiments on lab rats. We were the rats, and the ranch was the maze. I started noticing patterns in spring 2009. The phenomena would increase whenever we brought new equipment to the property, whenever we changed our patrol routes, whenever we did anything different from our established routines. It was adapting to us, studying how we studied it. One night in April, I decided to test this theory. Instead of following my assigned patrol route, I walked a random pattern, zigzagging across the property, doubling back, stopping and starting without reason. Within an hour, the phenomena began targeting me specifically. Lights in the sky that followed my movements, sounds that seemed to come from just behind me no matter which direction I faced. That feeling of being watched intensified 100-fold. I radioed Frank, told him what I'd done, what was happening. "Get back to the command center," he said. "Now!" I started moving. The phenomena intensified. The lights got closer. The sounds got louder. I could feel something's attention on me, like a physical weight. I was maybe 200 yards from the command center when I saw it. The Skinwalker, standing directly in my path, blocking my route. Not hiding, not watching from a distance. Right there, maybe 30 feet away, those orange eyes burning in the darkness. I raised my rifle, knew it wouldn't do any good but did it anyway. The Skinwalker didn't move, just stood there, looking at me. Then it did something I'd never seen before. It spoke. Not words, not human language, but something that carried meaning. A series of vocalizations that formed a clear message. Stop. Looking. That's what it communicated, not in English. Not in any language I know, but I understood it perfectly. Stop looking. Stop searching. Stop trying to understand. I stood frozen. The Skinwalker held my gaze for another moment. Then it turned and walked away. Just walked into the darkness and was gone. I made it back to the command center, told Frank what happened. He wasn't surprised. "They communicate sometimes," he said. "When they want to make a point. When they want us to back off. What are they protecting? What don't they want us to find?" Frank shook his head. "I've been here 8 years. I still don't know. Maybe there isn't anything to find. Maybe they just don't like being observed. Maybe this is all a game to them. A game. 8 years of phenomena. Multiple deaths and disappearances. People driven insane by what they'd witnessed. And maybe it was all just a game to whatever was on the other side." That thought kept me awake for weeks. Summer 2009 brought the second major casualty. Dave Morrison had been at the ranch for 3 years. One of the veterans. One of the ones who should have known better. We still don't know exactly what happened. He was on night patrol with one of the newer guys, a contractor named Mike Reyes. They were checking the fence line near the mesa when their radios went dead. We found Mike an hour later, wandering near the command center. He was in shock. Couldn't remember how he'd gotten there. Couldn't remember what had happened to Dave. He had 3 hours of missing time. 3 hours that were just gone from his memory. We searched for Dave for 2 weeks. Dogs, helicopters, thermal imaging, nothing. Then, on day 15, we found him. He was inside the homestead, the building we'd sealed after the Skinwalker moved in, the building nobody was supposed to enter. He was alive, physically unharmed, but he wasn't Dave anymore. The man we found couldn't speak, couldn't respond to questions, could barely walk. He just sat in the corner of that dark room, staring at nothing, occasionally making sounds that might have been words in a language none of us recognized. The medical team that Bigelow sent diagnosed him with catatonic schizophrenia, said his mind had essentially shut down, said he'd probably never recover. He didn't. Dave Morrison spent the next 3 years in a psychiatric facility in Nevada. He died in 2012. Never said another coherent word. What happened to him during those 2 weeks? Where was he? What did he see? We'll never know. But whatever it was enough to destroy a man who'd survived 3 combat tours without a scratch. That's the thing about Skinwalker Ranch. The physical dangers are real. People get hurt. People disappear. But the psychological dangers are worse. The things you see there get inside your head. Change the way you think. Break down your understanding of reality piece by piece until there's nothing left. I felt it happening to me. Slowly, day by day, the certainty I'd always had about how the world worked, eroding, being replaced by questions that had no answers. By the end of 2009, I was halfway through my contract. 2 years done, 2 years to go, and I wasn't sure I'd make it. Year 3 was when Bigelow's research took a new direction. We'd been documenting phenomena, observing, cataloging, trying to understand what was happening through passive observation. It wasn't working. The intelligence, whatever it was, had adapted to our methods. It knew when we were watching, knew how to avoid our cameras, knew how to stay just out of reach. Bigelow decided to try something different. Active engagement. They brought in new equipment, not just sensors and cameras, devices that could supposedly interact with whatever was on the other side. Technology that I didn't understand and that nobody would explain to me. They also brought in specialists. Not military, not researchers. People with different skills, a woman who claimed to be a psychic, a man who'd spent decades studying shamanic traditions, a physicist who'd been fired from his university for publishing papers on interdimensional theory. The regular security team, we were kept at a distance. Our job was still to watch and protect. But now we were watching something new. Experiments. Attempts to communicate with the intelligence directly. The first attempt was in March 2010. They set up equipment in the East Pasture, where the portal had opened in 2008, where Carlos had been taken. The psychic sat in the center of the equipment array. The shaman burned herbs and chanted. The physicist monitored readings I couldn't interpret. We formed a perimeter around them. Weapons ready. Watching the darkness. For an hour, nothing happened. The psychic sat with her eyes closed, apparently trying to reach out with her mind. The physicist complained about inconsistent readings. The shaman kept chanting. Then the portal opened. Not the same as before, smaller, darker, a tear in the air rather than an oval of light. Something looked through. I can't describe what I saw. Not accurately. The human brain isn't built to process what came through that tear. All I can say is that it was big, bigger than anything should be, and it was looking at us with something that might have been eyes. The psychic screamed, fell backward, started convulsing. The physicist was shouting readings, numbers that meant nothing to me. The shaman had stopped chanting and was backing away, his face white with terror. The thing in the tear regarded us for maybe 10 seconds. Then the tear closed, snapped shut like it had never been there. The psychic was unconscious. When she woke up 3 days later, she couldn't remember her own name. Couldn't remember anything past the age of 12. Something had reached into her mind and erased decades of memory. She never recovered. Last I heard, she's in a care facility in Arizona, still trying to piece together who she used to be. The experiments continued. Bigelow was determined to make contact, to understand what was on the other side of those portals, to find out what the intelligence wanted. But every attempt ended badly. People got hurt. People lost their minds. People disappeared. By the end of 2010, Bigelow had gone through 4 psychics, 2 shamans, and 3 physicists. Some quit. Some were institutionalized. One simply vanished from his locked room one night and was never seen again. And we still didn't have answers. What we did have was evidence that the intelligence was becoming more aggressive, more present. Like our attempts to communicate had gotten its attention, had made it interested in us in ways it hadn't been before. The phenomena increased exponentially. Events that had happened weekly started happening daily. Daily events started happening hourly. The ranch became a constant stream of impossible occurrences. UFO sightings every night, multiple craft, sometimes dozens, flying in formations, hovering over specific locations, shining lights down on the property like they were searching for something. Skinwalker activity reached levels we'd never seen. They stopped hiding, started walking openly across the property at all hours, day and night. Watching us, following us, sometimes standing outside our windows while we tried to sleep. And the portals, they opened constantly now, different locations, different sizes. Sometimes things came through, sometimes things went in. Once, an entire herd of cattle walked through a portal that opened in the middle of a pasture. We watched them disappear into that pale blue light. None of them came back. The property felt different. The air itself seemed charged, heavy with something we couldn't see but could definitely feel, like the barrier between realities was getting thinner, like something was about to break through. Frank called it the escalation, said it happened every few years. The phenomena would build to a peak, then suddenly stop, a cycle of activity and quiet that had been going on since the ranch was first settled. But this escalation felt different, more intense, more focused, like something was building toward a conclusion. "It knows we're trying to understand it," Frank said one night. "And it doesn't like it. It's pushing back, testing our limits, seeing how much we can take before we break. What happens if we break?" Frank looked at me with those dead eyes. "Then it wins. Whatever game this is, it wins." I didn't want to know what winning meant. I'd seen what happened to the people who got too close. The psychics with their erased minds. Dave Morrison staring at nothing in a psychiatric ward. Carlos wherever he was, if he was even still alive. The intelligence didn't just kill people, it did something worse. It took them, changed them, made them into something else. And I was starting to wonder if that was happening to all of us. Slowly, invisibly. If every day we spent at the ranch we were being changed in ways we couldn't detect. If by the time our contracts ended, we'd even be human anymore. Year 3 ended with an event that still haunts me. December 2010. The night the intelligence spoke to me directly. I was alone in the command center. Everyone else was on patrol or sleeping. I was monitoring the sensors, watching the usual parade of anomalies scroll across the screens. Then, everything went dark. Every screen, every light, every piece of equipment. In the darkness, I heard a voice. Not from outside. Not from the radio. From everywhere at once. From inside my own head. It said my name. My full name. the name I hadn't used since I joined the army. Then it said other things. Things about my past. Things about my family. Things that nobody at the ranch could possibly know. It knew me, had been watching me, studying me, learning everything about who I was and where I came from. And then it made me an offer. I won't tell you what it offered. Some things are too dangerous to share. But I'll tell you this. It was everything I'd ever wanted, everything I'd ever lost, everything I thought I'd never have again. All I had to do was open a door, a specific door in the homestead, the building where the Skinwalker lived. Just open that door and let something through. I said no. The voice laughed. At least I think it was a laugh. A sound that could have been amusement or could have been something else entirely. Then it said something I'll never forget. It said, "You'll change your mind. They all do. Eventually." The lights came back on. The screens flickered to life. Everything returned to normal. But nothing was normal anymore. Nothing would ever be normal again. The intelligence had made contact, had looked into my mind, had made me an offer I'd refused, and it had promised that I would change my mind. I had 1 year left on my contract. 1 year to prove it wrong. 1 year that would be the longest of my life. Year 4 at Skinwalker Ranch was the year I almost died. The year I almost lost my mind. The year I finally understood what we were really dealing with. And the year I decided to break my contract and run. It started in January 2011 with the disappearance of Frank Reeves. Frank had been at the ranch longer than anyone, 10 years. He'd survived things that had broken or killed everyone else. He was the anchor, the steady presence that kept the rest of us sane. On January 18th, he walked out of the command center to check on an equipment malfunction at the South Observation Post. He never came back. We searched for him for 6 days, covered every inch of those 512 acres, found nothing, no body, no equipment, no sign that he'd ever existed. On day 7, we found his journal. It was in his quarters, hidden under a floorboard. Hundreds of pages of notes he'd been keeping for a decade. Observations, theories, warnings. The last entry was dated January 17th, the night before he disappeared. It said, "They've been talking to me, every night for the past month, telling me things about the other side, showing me what's waiting there. I think I finally understand what they want, why they've been testing us all these years. They're not trying to break through into our world. They're trying to make us break through into theirs. They need us, need human minds to bridge the gap, to open the doors from this side. Every person who's disappeared, every mind that's been taken, they're all on the other side now, working for the intelligence, opening doors, preparing the way, and they want me to join them. I think I might say yes. I'm tired of fighting, tired of being afraid. Maybe it's time to see what's on the other side." Frank hadn't disappeared. He'd gone willingly. He'd opened a door and walked through. After 10 years, the intelligence had finally broken him. I became the senior security officer by default, the longest-serving member of a team that now had no institutional memory. No one left who understood what we were really facing. The phenomena in early 2011 was unlike anything we'd documented before. The portals were opening constantly now, multiple times per day. Sometimes they'd stay open for hours. We'd see things on the other side, landscapes that shouldn't exist, skies with too many suns, structures that defied geometry, and sometimes things would wave at us, beckon, invite us to step through. The Skinwalkers had multiplied. We counted at least a dozen distinct individuals. They'd lost all fear of us, would walk right up to the fence line and stand there watching, sometimes for hours. Sometimes they'd tap on the windows of our quarters at night. The cattle were all gone now, taken through portals. mutilated, simply vanished. The pastures stood empty, and people kept disappearing. Mike Reyes, the contractor who'd survived when Dave was taken, gone in February. His bed was still warm when we checked his quarters. His clothes still laid out for the next day. Just gone. Tommy Park in March. Found his flashlight in the middle of a field, still on, pointing at nothing. No other trace. 2 new contractors in April. They'd been at the ranch less than a week. Went on a routine patrol together. Neither came back. By May 2011, I was one of 3 security personnel left. 3 people to cover 512 acres of the most dangerous real estate on Earth. Bigelow was having trouble recruiting replacements. Word had gotten out in the private security community. Skinwalker Ranch was a career ender, if you were lucky. A life ender if you weren't. The researchers kept coming, though. Scientists and psychics and true believers who thought they could succeed where everyone else had failed. Most of them lasted a few weeks before the phenomena drove them away. Some lasted longer. None of them found answers. In June 2011, I had my second direct encounter with the intelligence. I was doing a solo patrol of the West Ridge, against protocol, but we didn't have enough people to follow protocol anymore. The sun was setting, long shadows stretching across the scrubland. I felt it before I saw it. That pressure in my skull, that sense of something vast turning its attention toward me. Then the world changed. I don't know how else to describe it. Reality flickered, like a television changing channels. 1 second I was on the West Ridge. The next I was somewhere else. A room. Walls that curved in ways that hurt to look at. Light that came from everywhere and nowhere. And in the center of the room, something that might have been a figure. Not the skinwalker. Not the things that came through the portals. Something else. Something that felt older, more fundamental. It spoke to me again, not in words, in concepts, in ideas that appeared fully formed in my mind. It showed me what it was. What they all were. The skinwalkers, the UFOs, the portals, the phenomena. They were all aspects of a single thing, a single intelligence that existed outside our reality. That had been watching humanity since before we were human. That had been testing us, preparing us, waiting for us to evolve enough to be useful. And Skinwalker Ranch was one of its laboratories, a place where the barriers were thin enough for it to reach through, to experiment, to collect specimens. Everyone who'd disappeared, everyone whose mind had been taken, they were all still there. On the other side, their consciousness absorbed into something larger, something that grew stronger with every mind it consumed. The intelligence wanted me to understand, wanted me to see the truth before making my choice, because it was offering me the same deal it had offered everyone. Join willingly and retain some sense of self. Resist and be taken anyway, absorbed completely, losing everything that made me who I was. It showed me Frank, or what was left of Frank. A presence inside the larger whole, still aware, still watching, but not fighting anymore, at peace. It asked me if I wanted to be at peace. I said no. The room disappeared. I was back on the West Ridge. The sun had set. 3 hours had passed in what felt like seconds. I walked back to the command center. Didn't tell anyone what had happened. What would I say? That I'd met God, the devil, something in between? I spent the next 3 months pretending everything was normal, doing my job, following protocols. But I was planning. I'd seen what was coming. The intelligence had shown me. The barriers were getting thinner. The portals were getting bigger. More and more people were being taken. Something was building to a conclusion. A moment when the testing would end and the real operation would begin. I didn't want to be there when that happened. In September 2011, I broke my contract, packed a bag in the middle of the night and drove away. Left behind the completion bonus, the benefits, everything I was owed. It was worth it to get out, to survive. But they found me anyway. Not physically. I made it out of Utah, made it to California, started building a new life. But they were in my head. The dreams started immediately. Every night I was back at the ranch, walking through portals, seeing things I couldn't describe, hearing the intelligence whisper to me about joining, about peace, about what was waiting on the other side. The dreams haven't stopped. 13 years later, and I still have them. Every single night. And sometimes when I'm awake, I see things. Movement in the corner of my eye, shadows that aren't quite right. Orange eyes watching me from across a crowded room. They're following me. Or something is. Keeping tabs. Waiting for me to change my mind. The intelligence said they all do, eventually. Everyone breaks. Everyone joins. Maybe it's right. Maybe I'll wake up one night and walk through a door that shouldn't be there. Maybe I'll finally get tired of fighting and accept the peace they're offering. But not today. Today I'm still here, still human, still fighting. And today I'm telling you what I know. Skinwalker Ranch is real. Everything they show on the TV show, everything in the books and documentaries, it's all real. And it's only a fraction of what's actually happening there. The intelligence is real. The portals are real. The things that come through are real. And they're not staying at the ranch anymore. In the years since I left, I've tracked reports of similar phenomena spreading. Other locations in Utah showing the same activity. Reports from Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico. The barriers are getting thinner everywhere. Skinwalker Ranch was the laboratory, the testing ground, but the experiment is expanding now, going global. The TV show they're making now, the one on the History Channel, it's controlled disclosure, letting people see just enough to be intrigued but not enough to panic. Normalizing the phenomena so that when it spreads, people will accept it instead of fighting. That's the plan, I think. Get humanity used to the idea of other realities, other intelligences. Get us comfortable with portals and entities and things we can't explain, so that when the doors finally open all the way, we'll walk through willingly. I don't know how to stop it. I don't know if it can be stopped. The intelligence has been working on this for thousands of years, maybe millions. It's patient, it's powerful, and it's already inside our world, spreading its influence further every day. All I can do is warn people, tell them what I saw, what I experienced, what's really happening behind the scenes. If you ever find yourself near Skinwalker Ranch, stay away. Don't go looking for phenomena. Don't try to make contact. Don't think you're special enough to succeed where everyone else has failed. The intelligence is watching, always watching, and it's very, very good at finding what people want, at offering them things they can't refuse. It found what Frank wanted, found what everyone who disappeared wanted, made them offers they eventually accepted. It knows what you want too. It probably already knows you're watching this video, already adding you to its list of potential recruits. Don't let it win. Don't give it what it wants. Stay away from the thin places, the locations where reality doesn't quite work right, the spots that feel wrong even when nothing visible is happening. And if something offers you peace, if something offers you everything you've ever wanted in exchange for just opening a door, say no. Say no and keep saying no until you can't anymore. That's the only advice I have, the only protection I can offer. My name is Marcus Cole. I spent 4 years as private security at Skinwalker Ranch. I saw things that broke my understanding of reality. Lost friends to something that shouldn't exist. Was offered a deal by an intelligence older than humanity. I said no. I'm still saying no. Every night, when the dreams come, every time I see those orange eyes watching me, I say no. Maybe someday I'll be too tired to keep fighting. Maybe the intelligence is right and everyone breaks eventually. But today is not that day. Today I'm still human. Still here. Still warning anyone who'll listen. A Skinwalker Ranch is just the beginning. The testing phase. What's coming next is bigger than any of us can imagine. And the only way to survive is to know the truth. Now you know. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. But whatever you do, don't go looking for what's on the other side of those portals. Because what's on the other side is looking for you too. And it's been waiting a very, very long time. I've been Marcus Cole. This has been my testimony. 4 years of hell that I wouldn't wish on anyone. Stay safe out there. Stay away from the thin places. And whatever you do, don't answer when they call your name. Because they will call. Eventually, they call everyone.